Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of you and peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. I'm going to start with the shouts out this time. Let me give my shouts out to S. Jock for the links and for the coming through on the Cash App. And shouts out and muito obrigado to Senor Kanga for the links. I'm still going through the emails though. And shouts out to Simba for overcoming barriers that others don't even grasp. Darknesses, darknesses, darknesses. I would go more in depth about how we must go against the simps, but AC and the Blackout channel took care of that for us. And he also exonerated the black dads who did their best and took seriously their office as father to these daughters who chose to act some baboons to fit in with their peers who didn't have dads. He said what the doctor said to Will's character in the movie clip that I posted to you all, that it's not your fault. When you did your job, the outcome is not your fault. If you did your job incorrectly, but your errors were honest errors, the outcomes weren't your fault after a certain age of the daughter or the son. And this is because the thing that kids can usually understand in an adult is sincerity and being there for them, even when the adult fails to get something that the kid wants. And that frees me up to focus this time on the sincere and authentic pro-blackness of two sectors of black men. One sector is the Muslims that are now being called black nationalists as a pejorative by the non-black, tragic desert mulatto Arabs and their Arab adjacent but fake Arab flunkies from neighboring parts of Asia, who wish they could be accepted as white by the non-Muslim whites while still holding on to their claim of the oneness of God. Now, granted, some have begun to call themselves black nationalists. I'm talking about some of the black Muslims have begun to call themselves black nationalists because they have understood that cooperation internally and trying to remedy your own people's ills when you have the medicine isn't the same as ashabiyya, against which the last messenger preached. Peace and prayers be to his reward. If the English word nationalism is the wrong word to use, that's another discussion that will then call for a new description that doesn't become the extreme of another label we affix to the name and the description of Muslim. The irony is that the ones who oppose black nationalism didn't realize that the term Salafi was exactly the same thing, as an extra description that was supposed to be unnecessary to attach to Muslim, because the noun Salafiyya means applying the understanding and precedent of the messenger, then his companions, then the children and the grandchildren, and in that order. It was supposed to be unnecessary, like saying a Muslim who worships Allah alone and recognizes no one else and nothing else as deity. Well, I mean, the noun or adjective Muslim includes the rest of it automatically. So the same ones that were saying that's nationalism, you can't do that just because you would turn and focus on your people, didn't say the same thing to Palestinians. They didn't say this to Kashmiris either. Meanwhile, there were many Palestinians, Muslim and non, who would say, I'm fighting for Palestine, I'm not fighting for a khilafah. Or they would say in Kashmir, I'm fighting for Kashmiriyya or Kashmirism. I'm not really fighting because oppression is wrong. And this is why I say that we might as well take the label Muslim away from those who falsely dichotomize the nouns Islam and blackness or the adjectives Muslim and black. It's not Bilal of the features who goes as far as I do. He's nice. And LBRY Muhammad is even nicer. They do more work, but they do it with more patience. But they may also be blacker than I am genetically and therefore subconsciously viewing others as our grandchildren. Having original American blood of Choctaws who sold out kidnapped Africans and German and French blood in my veins, I'm not as merciful, and I consciously view these others as grandkids who betrayed Adam and Eve for Satan, and therefore I consciously give them no mercy once I've made them conscious of what was previously subconscious to them. I say, question their faith, and when they insist on their racism, call them corrupt and unfit. And that's even if they don't know it's racism. But when they try to justify it, and even if they say it's not racism, call them disbelievers and apostates if they were ever Muslim to begin with. And then to call them blasphemers if they seek to drag Allah into their justification for their racism. Heretics. And they will do this to label their racism as something else and not racism. I say this, not Bilal and not LBRY. I say these things and I don't apologize to them for that either. If I find out I'm wrong, I'll apologize to Allah, but damn them and their feelings. They didn't care anything about you and your rights. I'm the one saying that if they feel good about something we do or say without losing their bias, we did something wrong or there was something necessary we did not do. I did not say these things, nor do Bilal and LBRY say what they say because we are deviants. We don't change Islam. Now, I am a whole and a jerk. But none of us try to change the religion. As Prince T'Challa said, we don't do that here. We say what we say because we're Muslim, and we aren't going to neglect that question of basic justice necessary to submit to Allah seriously and sincerely. So of the two sectors that are actually authentically pro-black, one is this sector of Muslims. They are black. They are not NOI. They're nice to the NOI. We may have relatives that are NOI, but they are black and they are orthodox. They do not call any human being God, nor call God a human being. They don't do any of these things. The next sector is the black manosphere. You heard me, SYSBM, Passport Bros, IBMOR, all these BMPTs are also sincerely pro-black these days. Now, when I say BMPT, there are those that actually travel, and then there are those that are pro-BMPT. And if you're pro, that generally, and you're black, that generally would make you part of the black manosphere, or a listener or an audience. But that is now the authentically pro-black sector, along with the Muslims that are casting off the trappings of the feelings of the non-black Muslims. That is the pro-black sector because the sapphires we are leaving, be they diasporan or continental, are not pro-black. We are now leaving behind the black women that are not pro-black, no matter where they come from. And we're not willing anymore to be their followers while they insist on leading us no goddamn where or everywhere except better. Everywhere except being more capable and more organized. The black women who are pro-black aren't the ones whom I call sapphire anyway, or boomshikas or bonquishas. So, moving on, these brothers that either kept it black but not Western or westernized, and those who went to Southeast Asia, are actually sincerely pro-black, not the simps who kept it limited to or even available to the ratchet boomshikas and then told us to not leave them either. No, not at all. A pro-black man would not excuse the women. No, better yet, a pro-black man would not exclude the women of our race because they are from our race, unless he thinks that's what is best for the black women themselves. But also a truly pro-black man does not let the women of our race take undue advantage of us and tell others of us to let them take this advantage either, just because they're from our race. If that Southeast Asian woman doesn't have issue with us and her people don't treat us as less than, while the black woman of a particular location habitually do that exactly, whether that location is Chicago or Luanda, then frankly, the pro-black thing to do is reward the black woman of other locations or Southeast Asian women who don't mistreat us and whose people don't mistreat us and whose family don't tell her that she made an inferior choice in us. We produce our generations with mothers who don't have an inferiority complex at all. Most of us are looking at them lovely, well melanated women in Southeast Asia too, as would I if I had been available. Hell, Simba had a minimum melanin requirement for the lady with whom he discussed marriage too, and it surpassed that of the men in her own country. The fact is that we are out here having to learn attraction to non-black women in many cases, even after what your moms and grandmoms did, the least of which was silence and the most of which was abuse or abandonment. Most of us are not out here looking at most of us actually are out here looking at the best melanated women of tropical Southeast Asia or Latin America, which usually means some of our blood in the lady's veins. In Latin America, it usually means she has some recent African blood too, as these nations are usually younger nations than even the USA and Canada are. We are not even going for the ones who look the least like the sisters with whom we have had the worst experiences in the Anglosphere of the diaspora, with a few exceptions. And they're recent too. Muhammad Ali said to his sister while he was in Africa that frankly, even the Southeast Asians couldn't steal him from a sister, and that even a continental sister couldn't steal him from the ones from the USA because the histories had diverged. But now his grandson doesn't look like he has more than an eighth of black blood in him, and it wasn't Muhammad Ali that diluted the blackness of that bloodline either. We have not actually betrayed the notions of pro-blackness even in our passport journeys and reblacktriations. We appear to have betrayed the emotions of it in the hearts of the same sistren who usually don't become pro-black until they can't get Brad to stick around. Those are two different things. With that being said, the first sector I mentioned, the Muslims who have awakened to the legitimacy of our Adam and Eve resembling distinction, are already doing the pro-black thing to do, which is to turn on our heels and tell the so-called pious, so-called siblings in faith that their very faith is in question until they side with us and against white supremacy in any form. Be that form Christianity, as they call it, or Hinduism, or Hindu nationalism, or Zionism, or even just the preference of paler complexions between Arabs and their adjacent flunkies. Yeah, I said it. Bilal and Abu Bakr are getting that done. And Abu Bakr will go hard on even other black people who leave a fingerprint in the vicinity of anti-black spaces. Good job, excellent job, actually, my fellow Muslim African brother. Long live the resemblance to Adam and Eve, just because the devils don't like it. And Bilal gives them that work. Good job, my fellow Muslim African brother. And you were rubbing exactly the good and the best thing in their worst faces. Hats off to you, and may Allah reward y'all both and everyone with you. And to the rest of you, understand that the two whose names I just mentioned are not alone either. So what is the next pro-black thing for the black manosphere to do? Well, that will be to go against the black fathers whose fault the BS and misandry actually are. They aren't dads who love their daughters. That's not a crime anyway, is it? They're supposed to. What kind of dad would I be if I did not love mine and they had done nothing to earn not being loved? That's the default. No, the culprits, the criminals, and the crooks are the dads who suffer from DLPS, which means Daddy's Little Princess Syndrome. Loving your daughter truly doesn't mean that you spoil her or poison her ear against the male gender as a category, let alone do both. It means that you simply provide and protect like a dad, and that you also tell her the good and bad about men as a collective, as well as about her fellow girls and women who will be both good friends and also frenemies. It also means vetting men for her, and not for their finances per se, but for their sense of responsibility and justice. Now, the perfect template from which to start fathering a daughter is to read the rights and responsibilities of the father and daughter in Islam. And there are experts in written works in this field among Muslim scholars, because studying this and teaching it are parts of our faith. If you want a shortcut to that proper balance, I just gave it to you. It is included in what I've already told black folks is the overall solution in medicine. You're welcome for the shortcut. But continuing on, DLPS sufferers have probably not done the same damage to the black family in the Anglophone diaspora that single moms have done, but they have added to it. And they have enabled the continuation of it. They have allowed it to become cyclical, and they have even validated and bolstered the entitlement of the Western sister and the Westernized sister from outside of the West. See, think about Kendra G. We wouldn't have known that she had a dad by what we know of her past and her views and her audience, and what she has said. When her dad got on camera, we saw why she can't fully see the value in men, especially black men. It was impossible to her. She's gotten better, but let's be honest about what it was. He never showed her or told her about men's value while providing the 3 out of 4 P's to which Crimson Cure refers by that name. The 3 that apply, not mind you, Crimson Cure is Kendra D. I'm talking about Kendra G. In the end, there are 3 of the 4 P's that would apply to Kendra G from her dad because they apply to any daughter from the dad. And in the end, she thought that maybe she really was more valuable and that men deserve no equal treatment. That is why she cheated on a man and got pregnant in college and then went to the clinic to not deliver the baby alive. And then when she had a second chance, she chose to not be with that dude on whom she already cheated. Years later, decades later, because in her own words, that's an argument I can't win. And that tells you that it's about winning arguments with them. A Muslima from Philly that I know knows her dad, but didn't live with him. And she later saw him doing more for his stepkids than her. But her own mom was a pistol, and she didn't realize that this is the matriarchy in which we grow up in the USA. And that her dad not being with a mom was a sign that he's actually not a pushover, but that the board of neck-rolling negresses, which we, as a nickname, refer to as the gynocracy, and sometimes called the culture, made up its collective mind that we black men were not allowed authority over our own children, but were welcome to do for other men's kids. He didn't become a stepdad until he was already a dad, at least. See, I never get a call until I'm doing something. Never. So her mom was already a single mom psychologically before she became one literally, even though she's Muslim. And she was the type to slap her daughter for stealing things she didn't steal because someone else thought she might have done so. She's still traumatized to this day from it, and even said it to my wife and me once in Medina years ago. She complimented me on how I treated a friend and said she noticed how often I said to my wife, "That's not your fault," when she'd expressed worry about things for which she wasn't even the guilty party. She hasn't heard any black person of any nationality, let alone yours, say that sentence so often to another black person. We say that to white folks with whom we're cool, to assuage their white guilt more often than we say it to each other, even when the latter is more true and the former is true to a lesser extent. Now back to her dad. The fact is her dad was allowed to do for the stepkids. Hell, he might get some appreciation for that. Her mom wasn't the kind to show anything for any appreciation for anything that he may have done based on what she said her mom was like. And she didn't even berate her mom. And she didn't say anything about her mom being abusive, intentionally at least, but quick to assume and fly off the handle before getting facts, but never with the benefit of the doubt. Her dad staying obviously was not an option, and I bet he wouldn't teach this Muslima from Philly, his daughter, how to low-grade men automatically either. See, daughter daddies who suffer from DLPS are the ones most likely to not have the kids taken from them or be driven away from their kids because the moms, their wives, know they suffer from DLPS. No matter in which words the moms think of this distinction and difference, they know which dads do and which dads don't. They make remarks like, "Ain't no one taking our daughter to the prom," or she ain't never dating or getting married, to see if the dad agrees. And what they mean is that if the dad loves her, he'll never let another man love her as a husband. And they look to see his reaction and determine if he is level-headed in his love for his daughter, loving her with his mind and wisdom as well as his heart, or if he's not wise enough to apply his head and wisdom in his love for the daughter. What this does is remove the dad's role as filter of her suitors later in life and transfers that role to the mom instead by default so that she will run her choices in men through mom. The daughter daddy that suffers from DLPS will tell his daughter that she deserves it all and should be exempt from having to make tough choices in life, especially in men, and that she already automatically meets all standards that even Superman could reasonably have. He lets her watch Disney princess movies, then later on, teeny bopper romantic chick flicks. She will then by default later on watch soap operas and rom-coms and read those romance novels about wild men who are only tamed by the love of an average broad that doesn't know she's average. She will accomplish much in life professionally because dad will tell her to also do so as to not need a man, just like mom would say, which is how he gets to stay in the home for which he pays the mortgage. She will accomplish all of this because he will encourage her to do the right things educationally and professionally, but for the wrong reasons. And you will see this in how she will go for everything except the men that deserve her choosing signals, not according to whom I think deserves them, but according to whom her mom's single friends and the movies in which she believes socialize her to think deserve them. She will accomplish it all and yet won't be able to do what Simone Biles did to become Simone Biles Owens. Her dad won't even know enough to tell her why she winds up either running over a man she can't respect and appreciate, or she winds up by herself, and he will not even be able to accept a man as a son-in-law unless that man is too good for his daughter, and he really should be approving, or rather disapproving, of his daughter for the man, approving the man for his daughter, but disapproving of the daughter for the man. Well, yeah. Then if he needs to be doing those two, then he will approve of the man for his daughter, but will approve of his daughter for the man too. He will never be able to accept the man as a son-in-law until his daughter's too old to really find anyone, and he's just stuck being the only man in her life. He won't realize that had his daughter's mom been a single mom, the daughter might have been a thought. But that with his simping-ass parenting, she's on the opposite extreme, and probably still a thought with more discretion and less of a reputation for it, but the same effects upstairs in her head. No man is good enough, and yet she has zero sense of chastity, a high body count still, some doctor's coat hanger scars in the uterus, and no husband or close to it. This is the result of these DLPS suffering daughter dads who also turn out daughters that are a bad influence on the daughters of dads who are balanced and try their best with actual wisdom and love that is in their hearts and minds. See, AC was right about the daughters of good dads imitating the thoughts who had none. But I'm going to add to his lesson the daughters of dads that had DLPS. And this is because when the young chicks get tired of imitating the loose behavior of their middle school fatherless classmates and someone manages to mentor them successfully a little bit to at least not be ducking six in middle school, the next thing they do isn't to develop some chastity, but it's to go the opposite direction and become spoiled princesses whose dads would never call themselves kings while still calling the moms queens. Their next step and their ideal reform is to be like the entitled daughters who think that no comparable man is actually comparable and who are going to take this notion with them into adulthood to still be thoughts, just more discreetly, and to the men for whose commitment they don't qualify. That's all. They're not really a loss to us when they become this, but they are a detriment to our daughters, just like the single moms of our daughters' friends can be. And also that dads are the ones holding guns to our sons for asking them out to the proms and doing it on cameras to post on social media to assert their manhood. My daughter's going to prom. The date showed up just as I was cleaning out my rifle. Look at this photo. Ha ha ha. Now, I'm not telling you that proms are okay as a Muslim, but I am saying that these DLPS suffering dads are holding guns with your sons and nephews and brothers in the picture frames because of some prom. And these same dads would teach our sons to not approach sisters for any reason outside of actual business, while complaining later that they don't approach their daughters. And I don't include transactional bump and grind in that business. They would teach boys not to approach for marriage too, because these boys learn early on that the same girl whose dad is unbalanced won't respect him if he approached for a reason that any dad might respect. Like marriage. She won't respect you if you came with that kind of approach. So simply put, if dad could respect it, she can't respect that man anymore. And that is because, while dad is a serious dad and very protective of his daughter, which is fine in and of itself, he is not restrictive of his daughter. He does not put the clamps on her. There is also a laundry list of complaints that these unbalanced daughter dads have about the young men these days that result from what they taught these men. But I'll leave that for you to share with your experiences in the comments section below. Suffice it to say now that these dads are in the worst position to complain at all about the young men because they cause the opposite extreme that the intentionally single moms cause. I'll close by saying that if we don't know if a daughter dad is a DLPS sufferer or not, we should not assume that he is just because he has daughters, with or without sons. However, once we can see that the man is such, like Kendra G's dad, we should learn all we can about his businesses and sources of income and collectively boycott them as best as possible. If one of you is already in a business contract or an agreement with such a man, go ahead and fulfill that, and then don't enter into the new one and don't renew that contract unless they will somehow benefit us more than them. We should even advise each other that his daughter, once we know who such a man is, that his daughter has such a dad, so that young brothers and sons of our friends don't mess around and become emotionally attached to them and wind up their victims. We must also not be willing to mentor their daughters except in the same way that we can afford to mentor the children of single moms, and that is with the red pill that their dads and moms don't want us telling them. We should only tell them that they must compete for men like they compete for degrees and accolades at work, and that it isn't because they're worthless that they must compete, but because you black men are actually as worthy and valuable as their dads and moms refuse to tell them that you are. This is part of the SBO standard. And welcome again to 2024 Darknesses. Thanks for listening, and as always, I hope it helps. Black heart, black mind, black out. Assalamu alaikum, and black heterosexual non-select male power just because they don't like it. And black patriarchy, not for the DLPS suffering dads. Until extinction of Judgment Day. This time, when the plane docks at the gate and you exit the jet black aircraft, I will ask you to punch that Cash App button and to punch the link to the merchandise. Only punch in numbers into the Cash App that are easy for you later on. Save something for that merchandise quickly. Thank you for flying with us again on Jet Black Airways, where jet black is also a verb. Keep jetting black with us until the wings and the wheels fall off. Gender justice forever.